You buy cacao butter and open it, how long do you think it stays good for?
If you could buy cacao butter like this and open it, it'll be, as long as you keep it in a cool and dark place, 6 months. I mean, I wouldn't keep anything that's oil around for longer than that. And if you think for some reason you are going to have it longer, then keep it in the refrigerator. But as long as it's not too hot, it's going to be fine. And also you want to be careful because they took the time to create a low temperature cacao butter. So anytime things have been heated to, different oils go rancid at different temperatures. So I can't say 118 for anything, but they take into consideration how hot the oil is getting when they're extracting it. So if you're doing the hot water immersion, just be careful that it's not going to get too hot in there. As long as you can touch it to your hand, a hot tub is what, like 100 or 90 something degrees, and it's really hot. That would melt the butter, so that's not above that temperature that things start to lose their integrity. So just be aware of that. But for also today's purpose, I just chopped it up, and that's going to break down right here in the food processor. So I'm adding that in, and then I'm going to add my agave nectar, and on there I put 3/4 of a cup or less. And the clusters that I have for you to eat today, I did use 3/4 of a cup. And for most people who are used to a standard American type of diet, or even standard vegan American diet, are used to things being pretty sweet. So 3/4 of a cup is a pretty sweet flavor. I personally would prefer it a little less sweet, so I would make mine with maybe 2/3 of a cup for myself. So you just taste it and see what level of sweetness you like. I always say start with less, and then you can give it a taste, and if it feels like you want it a little more sweet, add a little more. But with adding less sweetness, it could become more of not just a protein cluster, but a superfood cluster that's satisfying and sweet, but not so much like a candy. What you're going to have today is more in flavor similar to a candy, but it's full of superfoods and high mineral ingredients, high nutrient ingredients. And so the next thing I have here is some raw honey. And raw honey is enzyme rich. It's mineral rich. Honey could be described as a superfood as well. It's not low caloric, but it's very good for you. And obviously it's not a vegan food, but if you buy it from a producer who knows where their honey is coming from, then they'll know if the bees were treated with respect and care, because in some situations it's not good conditions even for the bees, the little insects. So as long as you take care, and you do want to take care that you're working with the raw honey. And I know that Jessie has a really phenomenal honey too that I tried recently, and it's called Snuggle Spoon, which is the cutest thing ever. I love that. Okay, so we've got all of those ingredients, and then I also am adding 2 vanilla beans seeded. And I didn't know if any of you had seeded vanilla beans before, so I just wanted to show you quickly how we do that. And what I'm going to do is just chop both ends of the vanilla bean off, and then stripe it right down the center. When I'm striping it down the center, I'm not cutting all the way through the vanilla bean, I'm just cutting that top layer of skin. And then I'll break it open in the middle, and now I'm using the back of my knife. If I were to use the sharp end of my knife, I would tear up the vanilla bean itself. So I'm just going down with the back of my knife, scraping down all those vanilla beans to come right off, or vanilla seeds I should say. You can use a spoon for this, or any type of dull but hard tool. And then you just scrape that right in there. And it's really beautiful. Once you see it all broken down, you see the speckles of the vanilla beans. And if you're into making raw ice creams or anything like that, it's really fun just to use the whole vanilla bean, because then you get to see those vanilla speckles. Like, I don't know if it wasn't the French vanilla ice cream, but there was another vanilla bean ice cream, I think, that was like a vanilla ice cream with those speckled vanilla beans. So again, I scraped that right down the center. That didn't get cut quite all the way. And then using the back of the knife, I'm just scraping all those seeds out. And that's all there is to it. Now, you don't want to throw away the vanilla pod. I know vanilla beans are precious. They're pretty expensive. So save those pods, and you can use it for a number of different things. You could infuse it into a honey or a sugar that you use at home, or your agave nectar. You can also just save it in a jar and use it for tea, for cocoa. I save them in a jar and just tear it in half and put half of it into a hot cup of tea that I'm making or something like that. Or it's even, you can put it just in a bottle of water and have vanilla scented water, and it's really delicious. Vanilla is a really good substance to use if you have trouble sleeping at night. It actually helps to relax the body. And so it's really interesting that it's used with cacao so much. Cacao is this very masculine, very outgoing, very energizing element, and vanilla is this very feminine, very softening, very slightly sedating element. So they pair together really nicely in those characteristics. So there's our vanilla, and then I'm also adding, I call for a quarter teaspoon to a half a teaspoon of salt, and I'm calling that a little more than a quarter teaspoon. But salt is really important when you're working with any food in general. It opens up your taste buds so that you can really taste the flavor of the foods that you're working with. But especially in sweet, a lot of people don't think sweet and salt. They think, oh, sweet is sweet, salt is salt. I want my savory food salty, I want my sweet food sweet, but the flavor of sweet really comes out when you add that salt to it. And especially when you're working with chocolate, I call salt the muse of sweet, but I call salt extra specially the muse of chocolate, because I can have an element like what I have here and taste that, and it tastes perfect after it's all blended together. But once I add the chocolate to it, all of a sudden I feel like there's something missing. There's a flavor that's lacking in that. And the minute I add a few more pinches of chocolate to it, it all comes alive in my mouth. So whenever I'm tasting food, I look for the flavor just to pop in my mouth. I want it to say, oh my gosh, that is so good, that's perfect, I want more. If I taste it and it just tastes like, oh, it's good, it's okay, but it's not awesome, it's not great, I know that probably what's missing is another little pinch of salt, and that just makes a world of difference. So once I've got all those ingredients in there, I'm just going to turn it on, let it go, and step away from the machine. And really it takes anywhere between, depending on the warmth in the room, it could take 5 minutes